Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Siddharth Deshmukh. I am a current president of Indo-Japan Business Council, and I have today a pleasure to host two esteemed speakers and a panelist in this very special session of Authors Corner, the first session of the Authors Corner this year at IGB's BC Konichiwa Pune 2021. We have a special features for the authors and so we created Authors Corner. In that, we have today with me Mr. Nobuhiro Takahashi. He is a senior executive with a Japanese multinational auto component manufacturing company, a former advisor of a Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry in India, GCCII, and Mr. Takahashi is currently deployed at a company headquarters in Japan. He owns about 30 years of experience and worked at the Indian subsidiary of the company for 13 years in the capacity of a managing executive officer. Before moving back to Japan, he is also an editorial advisory to the board member of Asia Community Network. And today we are going to talk about his book, which is in Japanese and is being translated in English. The English title is What You Should Know About India to Succeed in India. With me is also the editor, founder and editor-in-chief of Asia Community News, Mr. Sanju K. Ahuja. And good afternoon, gentlemen, and good evening, Takashi-san in Japan. So if you can hear me, let's start the conversation. Now, so first of all, I would like you to tell us your journey to India and your experience about working in India.
That was written in my book. Anyway, so I stayed in India for 13 years. I work for the economic freedom of India. So I written a book as a record for the future in the view of Japanese business person.
Okay.
So my book will be published by second author, Mr. Sanjeev K. Ahuja.
Yeah.
Detail of my book can be explained by Sanjeev-san. Please, Sanjeev-san.
Okay, definitely.
Thank you,
So, but
Takashi-san.
before you writing this, yeah, before we talk about the book, I just wanted to know your experience living in India and why you thought of writing a book.
So because Japanese media didn't tell the truth of the India, that's all.
Okay. And what kind of a truth is it? Like difficult truth, or it is no correct picture?
Truth means, as Japan government declared, there are only two countries in Asia. That is a democracy and constitutional country. That is India and Japan. In the view of constitution, Japan's media didn't mention about the truth of the constitutional aspect of India at all. So I feel something to write the record for the future. My detail, Sanjeev-san will explain.
Is it like this book is only for a business people, or it can be a good reference for any Japanese?
I written for the Japanese citizens. So after publishing in English, that is based on my Japanese book and past my article written in India in English.
Okay.
So what kind of opinion I have for the freedom of the economy of India country? You can read in English.
Okay. So now it's a very pleasure that your book now people can read in English and it will be widely available to all Indians and other people also who can read English. Definitely, it's a good news. So Sanjeev, if I can come to you, how do you decided that? I mean, what is your participation of English book? First, I want to understand that so that we can, our viewers can understand what the role you are playing.
Yeah, before I introduce the book as such, because I've gone through the book, because I need to go through the entire stuff to understand. And though when we met in India with Mr. Takashi-san, so though he explained to me, because I don't know Japanese language, then I requested him to give me the translation of this book, which he did in English. And when I read this, so I said, this book is written on India, Indian industrial scene, Indian industrial relations, and this is more about human resources, in the industrial peace, ease of doing business, the kind of problems the Japanese can face. So primarily, the book is written for Japanese. Uh, for the companies, those who are already in India, plus those who are planning, they're in the middle of they're in the middle of decision making. Yes, we have to come to India, but they are thinking, they are taking their own time. Because India is not a small country. Like Mr. Takashi-san said, there's a lot of negativity in the minds of many Japanese investors about India, many thanks to the media. That has been highlighting very negative picture of India in Japanese world. So for Japanese, India is not that an attractive destination. But when they compare with Taiwan, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia and other East Asian, Southeast Asian countries. So I said, okay, this is really a good attempt by the Takashi-san to clarify to the Japanese that, look, what you have read in media and otherwise about India, that is not the actual. Here is my personal experience with India. I have been dealing with India for the last 30 years. And although 30 years, I have lived in India for 13 years and gone through the thick and thins of each and everything from top to bottom, left and right. 360-degree experience of being of a Japanese being in the middle of situation, and that is what Mr. Takashi-san is trying to tell the Japanese counterparts and the fellows that, look, this is what they see. Of course, this book also talks about some not so good things, like there were 2 gory incidents of violence in 2005. One that was in Honda scooters and motorcycles. So Takashi-san has not mentioned the name of the companies in the book, but he has reported those incidents. So there are limitations like that. So I thought, yes, it should be equally read by our Indian counterparts also. So because majority of us here, we know English language, we are more comfortable in Japanese. Very few select people in India, know Japanese. So that was our decision to collectively, we decided why not to, go ahead to translate the book and publish in India in English language.
Okay.
So anyway, ignoring the concept of the constitution, then that kind of violence can be happened in the Japanese company. So I read the 1 or 2 example, the problem in the past. Constitution and democracy is the most important point for the country.
Okay. Okay. So in your experience while working with Indian counterparts and Indian workers in the environment that India has, what was difficult? Was it managing people, or making the Japanese managing was it people's expectation management was difficult, or managing the Japanese expectation was difficult?
Those who understand the Japanese constitution then compare with the Indian constitution. Changing point is only one point. Indian constitution clearly mentions the fairness of the diversity. That means the unity in diversity. Those who doesn't understand the Japanese constitution, they can't understand the Indian constitution status.
Okay.
Nowadays, some of Japanese person ignoring the concept of the Japanese constitution in the law. So I feel angry to write down that kind of book for the future record.
Okay.
That's all. Difficulty is the sense of the constitution. That's all, and democracy.
Okay. Okay. So it's about fundamentally understanding how the structure of the country work. That's what you wanted to record for the future generations to refer to while doing business in India. That is my correct
anyway, basic is a very much important. Basic of the citizens are democracy and constitution. However, Japan has a too much peace status after the war. So they are too much look down the status of the constitution. What is the purpose of that? So background of the some describing the incident or something, that kind of anger is available behind me. And the media doesn't tell the truth of the Indian constitutional status. And what is the purpose of the law of the Japan's constitution also? Okay. That is the purpose of me to write down the record for the future. That's the message for the younger generations.
So is it a message only for the Japanese younger generation, or you think the English book can also give message to the Indians?
Yeah, so that message will be edited by Sanjeev K. Ahuja-san.
Yeah.
That is a hand of him.
Right. So coming to the...
before we take our discussion forward, I think we should introduce to our audience what the book is all about. So can I take a couple of minutes, minutes to, as to, like everybody knows now, as you have introduced, that the title of the book is that what you should know about India to succeed in India.
Yeah.
It is a kind of, it throws light on a little difference of points on how to make human resources and money. And the new title of this book in English is going to be Rising Sun of India for Economic Freedom, an observation by a Japanese yogi, director of Indian business, something around that. Like it very clearly says that it's a very personal observation, minutely studied observation, and by a Japanese executive, top executive of it, those who work with the Japanese component manufacturer multinational company. So this is very written in Japanese language. The Takahashi-san's book is meant to assist Japanese companies, in fact, either operating in India or planning to invest here to get familiarized with the Indian corporate ecosystem before taking the big leap, the big plunge in India. So it's a kind of first kind of instance where a senior Japanese corporate executive has authored a book with this title. And a little about Mr. Takahashi-san staying and working in India for the last 13 years. He was the managing executive officer with the this company. He has poured about 30 years of his corporate experience into dealing with the Indian business ecosystem in his 142-page book. This is a 148 book, and real 4.5 by 7 inch in size, which can really go well in the pocket also. So, but our book, which is being published in English we may have some photographs, because this book does not have the photographs as such. We may add some more things like new labor code, new labor rules, and which are being implemented in India, most probably from January 2020. This is just to update the total HR scene of India. So this book was originally published in Japan by Gentosha Renaissance Shinsho, Tokyo. This book attempts to explain a little difference of point how to make human resource and money. We'll explain a little further. The book concretely summarizes the struggle of a Japanese person who worked in India for 13 years. It was not an easy going for Mr. Takahashi-san here. And it goes well, same for any Japanese or foreign national who comes to India. It's not an easy terrain to live and work. Born in 1963, Takahashi-san is a graduate of Osaka University of Foreign Studies and takes an avid interest in world economic and political developments, revolving especially around India, Japan, China, and he is a staunch supporter of India-Japan friendship. Out of his long experience, he has penned down in-depth information on industrial relations scene in the backdrop of human resource development and labor, factory, wage laws, acts of labor laws, with an apt comparison between India and other countries like Japan, China, Thailand, as to what are the work hours, what are the working conditions, what are the wage laws, and other regulations related to that HRC. This book also finds mention of various trade and labor unions and labor unrest incidents reported in the past, especially in Gurgaon. This book offers tips to Japanese companies on the basis of learning out of the labor unrest incidents. Of course, these are also part of the book. And according to Takahashi-san, there are many books about India, but many of them are about social situation and tourist information of India. So it is difficult to imagine the country as a whole. The reality of India, which is characterized by unity in diversity, is not conveyed. As one of the India's current directors, when he was director, he wrote in the book, he strongly feels that he should tell the people of Japan about the stereotypes of information and the points of management in India that are free from prejudice. Divided it into two sections, the book also mentions the Indian financial management, accounting, taxation issues, and accounting system and practices in the companies registered in India, whether wholly owned Japanese subsidiaries or joint venture firms. So one very important thing which he has mentioned in his book is, which we don't find any other books. One of the crisis he feels is that the appeal points for attracting investment in India have remained stereotypes. So when it comes to marketing India in countries like Japan, there is a very common word you must have heard from bureaucrats and the ministers or other institutions, that India is a large country, huge potential. Basis that they're trying to market India. Whereas Takahashi-san says, unless we break away from this and change the slogan to deregulation and open market, what he means to say is that the Indian government is not talking about deregulation too much or open market concept. They've been harping continuously on large and potential market, which is not sufficient to attract Japanese investment into India. So when we compare it with other countries, I mean, Japanese investment in India is not that huge, is not that great, despite Japan has been here since 2000, late 70s, when Maruti and Denso came first. So what he needs to say is that, though he has not written this in, I am trying to say that that most of the investment from Japanese or the Japanese companies are going to either Vietnam, Indonesia, or Malaysia, and only a fraction of them are coming to India. The number of Japanese companies in India has grown to 1455 till last year, as per the JETRO records. And this number has not grown very substantially. In 2019, the number was just one company less. It means in just 1 year, we had added just one Japanese company in India. So that is not a, I mean, very enthusiastic figure. Whereas in deep comparison, 66 Korean companies entered in India in 2020, whereas Japanese just one company entered, as per the data. And the number of the number of Korean companies have grown substantially from 750 to they have crossed 800 marks. Somewhere around 825 now. The number of Japanese companies are increasing in fast speed as compared to Japan. So decision making amongst the Japanese companies comparatively is slower as country, as they think the country is big with diverse culture, geographics, and demographics. And something new which is being talked about in the Japanese and Korean world is that in India, that period of 3 years is not enough for executives. Generally, they are posted here for around 3 years, which is not enough to understand such a big country. Therefore, there is a talk underway that this 3-year period should be increased to 5 to 6 years. And some corporates have started doing it because it's very difficult to understand. By the time an executive from Japan comes here and understands the geographies and culture and other things, 3 years are over. He is all about to leave the country. This is happening. So these are some of the salient things which he has really talked about in his books. And of course, we will delve on it a little more as the conversation progresses. Yes, Mr. Deshmukh.
Yeah, so I understood that this is really kind of a reference book for a Japanese mid-management in particularly, who is supposed to interact with India and or working in the field in India. Interestingly, but I believe this book might be as well interesting to understand that what is Japanese thinking. Although Takashi-san wished to explain the India side, but probably we have to maybe we have insight from this book that how the normal Japanese people pursue the India. So do you think this book is equally a reference book for the Indian mid-management?
For Indian management, it is easy to understand. Nowadays, concept of democracy and concept of constitution is very much poor nowadays in Japan. However, Indian intelligence person very much, very much under intelligence persons are available. When Sanjeev Ahuja-san edit for Indian citizens, it is easy to understand. There are differences for the nationality. Global common sense, only one word. Open market economy. For that purpose, deregulation and stable of the politics. That is the basic of the open market economy. Deregulation, sound infrastructure, and stable politics. That is the basic of the market economy of global common sense. As Japan government declared through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there are only 2 countries in Asia, those who satisfy the democracy and constitution. That is only India and Japan only. There are no other countries, those who satisfy the democracy and constitution. That is a very much important point. India or Japanese is not the important point. Important point, how we can stick into the basic of the democracy and the constitution. That is a point of mine. That was mentioned in the past article of Asian Community News also. Sanjeev Ahuja-san will edit based on my past article also. Thank you.
Yeah, so industrial, what he means to say is that industrial peace and peaceful working environment is the key. Even if we are one of the largest democratic country in the world, but there are some disturbing news coming here and there, and you know the negative news travels a lot than the positive one, and that is taken more seriously than anything else. So deregulation, that's fine, open market, fine, but we need, you know, stable political, though of course there has been stable government, majority winning government ruled by BJP, second consecutive term, that's fine. But still there are some news articles coming here and there on different issues that really, you know, create skepticism in the minds of the potential investor. That is one very uh, great consideration. And that is why in the last 3 years, not many companies have, Japanese companies have invested in India. They are still, you know, staying back, thinking with cross fingers. They are taking their time.
How do you compare to that the Korean companies which are flooding in, and even Chinese companies could gain the number. So I mean, what is wrong that we can fix about this situation?
That way, I mean, situation remains the same, whether it is for Japanese or Korean or Chinese or European or Western countries or potential investors. But Koreans, I find, are very aggressive and very positive about India, despite all these situations, that despite all the negative news doing round, they are taking very quick decisions, and they are telling their people, their own countrymen, the potential investors, that look, India is the future. However tough terrain is that, however difficult it is, however difficult, diverse and big country it is, very difficult to understand, but make a quick decision and jump and then come to India. And majority of these 66 companies are basically, of course, now because Samsung has set up its own factory here, the biggest world's biggest mobile manufacturing factory. So they are OEM suppliers, but they are, of course, they're bound to come. But their decision making comparatively, I find, is much faster than what Japanese are taking too long time to, you know, make a decision.
Kashisan, do you have any comment on this?
Sorry, me? One aspect of, as Sanjeev-san pointed out, is the truth. The speed of the decision making. This is the one point. However, the reason is very much simple. Japanese company considers as an organization. So not belonging to the individual person. Decision making is up to the organization. So we are based on the democracy and the constitution. That's from my side. Speed is everything. Decision is belonging to the individual persons. It is quick. However, when we respect the basic of the democracy, decision making by belonging to the individual person is a democracy? I don't think so. That is up to the organization. That is a law governed country, right? That's from my side.
Okay, I want to add little to it. Uh, uh, I'm being a journalist. I'm very blunt in my opinion and feedbacks, and I find there's a sense of complacency among Japanese corporates that, of course, they came early into India. They invested uh, early as compared to other countries. I mean, their competitor, I will say, Korea. So they were okay, but uh, few days back, I shared this figure with a senior Japanese diplomat, a corporate person, basically, not a diplomat, who heads a Japanese institution. So he was not aware the number of Korean companies in India. I told him that it has already crossed 800, and he was shocked. He was shocked. He said, "Are you? Is it the truth?" I said, "Yes." Then I shared that 66 numbers in 2020 when the entire India was under lockdown induced by COVID pandemic. So they are not aware of the situation, how fast the Koreans are acting, and how aggressively they are looking at India. Despite all these sins, I mean, they are making their decisions fast and they are moving. So I think, I mean, Japanese have to buckle up. They have to make their decision making faster. So because they are trying to catch them up. The Koreans are trying to catch them up. The biggest example is Maruti Suzuki share is going down, and Hyundai and Kia Motors share is going up. They are eating away the Suzuki share. So I think the Japanese companies have to come out of their cocoon, and they have to really think out of the box. The time has come.
Right. And all these things that so we are now so far discuss what should Japanese do, or what should be their understanding about India. But as an Indian, what should we do? That's the question we need to also ask, because one partnership is growing, another partnership is a strong based fundamentally it is strong based on the two democracies, based on the common values, and based on the historical peaceful relationship, but still it doesn't show the speed. Are we looking at the speed, or are we looking at a stable strong relationship, and what we can offer to Japanese? This question is for both of you. You can answer one by one.
So, as Sanjeev-san said, and as I mentioned in my article in the past, message from India is open market economy, foundation of the economy right now. After the Soviet Union was collapsed, there is only one method, that is a market economy. Basic of the market economy is the deregulation, sound infrastructure of the road, rail, air, and electricity, based on the stable politics. No, the other message required, just only one message. India stick into the foundation of the market economy. We are open market economy. That is the only requirement for India to clearly mention all over the world. That's my understanding. How about Sanjeev-san?
Yeah, Takesan, very really agree with you. The, the message should be loud and clear that we are an open economy. Plus, the serious problem with India is that the basic infrastructure, whether it's civic infrastructure or the social infrastructure, is an area of concern. So when it comes to civic infrastructure or otherwise, like the roads, the flyovers, the tunnels, and the railways, the IRTS system, metro, which is metro in India, I mean, is a problem of is a matter of concern for the potential investors, even the existing investors. Plus the social infrastructure, barring some very few select metros of the country like Delhi NCR, Mumbai, or Bangalore, the social infrastructure is in really bad straits. And social infrastructure, I mean to say like good hospitals, good uh, schools for the children of the investors, those who come from Japan or other countries. I'm barring few like Delhi and NCR. And this was quite evident when this Corona pandemic struck, and that was the first time when Japanese were actually shocked to the real sense that, oh my God, where we are. And it was a very scary and gory situation all over. And many of our Japanese friends lost their lives also here. And they had to, now they realize that these medical health and healthcare facilities was a serious problem that time. Though now India has really come out of it and has tried to strengthen up the infrastructure on that front. But I mean, that was a really gory situation. That has really shaken the confidence of the investors here. I had a very personal discussion with many Japanese companies and their executives, senior executives. I mean, they were really shocked this time. But they are staying put. They are staying put. I mean, this is a brave community, I must say. It's a brave community.
So I think out of this discussion, the message is coming clear that we have to demonstrate the real democracy, and the pillars of it is a sound infrastructure. Uh, we have a diversity, but we have to also show that we can uh, move together on certain aspect, which we might be quite patriotic about it, but the investors or the businesses don't think that way. And their priorities can be more about the infrastructure, more about the facilities, more about the stable government, governance, and so on and so forth. Other thought comes to my mind. It always said that when there are many problems, there are many opportunities. So do you think it's a, but looking at the infrastructure expansion going on in India, looking at all these things, Japanese companies should also a little bit take in a different spirit to invest in a problems to fix them. Probably that's a long, can be a long term strategy to be partner in building than don't only in a partner in growth. Because once you have all the infrastructure, the companies which comes, they are more of like a consumer oriented company, right? They want to come plug and play the office and start business and start making money and start selling the things. But maybe we need more fundamental partnership in infrastructure, environment, health, and so, and of course, but still the problems do persist what we are discussing so far. How about that?
So anyway, infrastructure for the electricity and water and road and rail and air, that kind of infrastructure is the foundation of the country itself. So as per the central government direction, neighborhood of the India cannot invest into the public sectors right now. That is the truth. Country's 100 years future's creation. So that is a mission of the central government and state government to prepare the sound infrastructure. To prepare the fund of the preparing the sound infrastructure. Anyway, calling the investment from all over the country and calling the official development assistant from the foreign countries. For that purpose, anyway, only one message: stick into the open market economy. As per that concept, deregulation is required. As I said first, only two countries in Asia, that is a constitution and democracy, is India and Japan only. Open market economy and democracy and constitution. You can compete with China also. Their democracy is that their open market economy is a disguised open market economy, as you know. However, countries, those who have the democracy, can change into true market economy. How Indian government, state government, and central government can appeal all over the world? We are open market economy with deregulation. Then automatically official development assistance from foreign country will come accordingly. Then you spend these funds for the future younger education and sound infrastructures. As I said a while time ago, sound infrastructure is creating the future of the country itself. That is a mission of the state and central government, not the private sector's matter. Now is the time to create the 100 to 200 years future prosperity of India. Now is the time. That's my understanding. How is Sanjeev-san?
Yeah, that the Japanese government is very well conscious of this concern, and that is why it is pumping in billions and billions of yen into India in the form of official development assistance. And India is the biggest recipient of ODA from Japan in the world. And despite all sins, Japan knows very well that India is the future for their investors in the years to come. Next 100 years, they are going to be here. Oh, beyond 100 years, they are going to be here. So, though of late, the central government, Indian central government also is trying to strengthen the infrastructure, like Mr. Nitin Gadkari, who is looking after the Ministry of National Highways and Infrastructure. So the things are happening on really fast pace. So there are changes happening here on this front, and Japanese government is also assisting Indian government in the form of ODA. Like Delhi Metro is one of the big examples. The money all came from Japan only. Likewise, the high-speed rail, bullet train. Now Japan is also pumping in ODA in northeastern states of India. They are agreeing. I mean, they are there to give ODA wherever it is required. They have opened their treasures, I would say, for India. It is India to decide how to strengthen the infrastructure. No, not only
now, Sanjeev-san.
Yes.
Nowadays, Indian central government clearly using the Indo-Pacific Oceans keyword. That means law-governed and free and open and India-Pacific strategy. That means democracy, constitution, and open market economy. Law governed, not human being governed. Law governs the country. That is a key word. Open market economy, constitution, democracy. That is a concept of the central government's wording, Indo-Pacific Ocean. In my understanding, I'm continuously saying around 10 years about this wording, as you know.
Right.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. If a country has to grow, these are the key things. But definitely, every country has its own problems, and some of them are too complicated to solve in days or in years, and some of them are like kept alive for many reasons. So I think this can go on. But the interesting thing our viewer wish to know is that when this book is now coming, so that people can read that, when it will be available in English, because I think having this point of view, reading this point of view from by Indian people will be interesting. I'm sure I look forward to read this book. So when is it coming out, Sanju-san?
Sanjeev-san, please.
Most probably it should be out in the first quarter of next year. Before March. Before March, it should be out on all platform, like physically it will be there. Plus on Amazon and Flipkart, the ebook, the Kindle version, the paperback. So by February or March, we plan to launch it in India.
Okay, so I think that's a very book is going to be very interesting, and I'm looking forward to my first copy to read this, and I am sure our viewers will also be interested to read this book definitely. Today, as I promised, we are wrapping up this in a 45 minute this, because of time constraint on your side. So thank you so much for joining in today. I really enjoyed talking and having conversation with you, and because I'm a avid reader, so I'm definitely looking forward to read this book and this point of view and go more in depth of it, that how things work and it should be, and what we can do as an organization. Also, IJBC, we will love to invite you in future also to discuss your point of view in a different forums, industrial forum as well as a business forum, and in general too. But at Konichiwa Pune, it was huge that you both accepted our invitation on very graciously, and be a part of a Konichiwa Pune and discuss the whole lot of different topics around India-Japan relationship and business, and uh, maybe similarities and differences that we may have the opinion, but that's how the partnership grows strong, and we believe that India-Japan partnership is a natural partnership, and it will strengthen beyond the COVID. Also, now that COVID is subsidizing, we see many Japanese executive coming back to India soon, and things will start moving around. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to Takashi-san. Thank you very much to Sanju-san. And I look forward to talk to you very soon in some other forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye. Namaskar. Namaste. Dhanyawad.